He begins by painting the kingdom of Valerian as if he were guiding a close friend through a memory wrapped in gold and shadow. He describes how its people once spoke of King Alistair with a warmth usually reserved for family, not rulers. There was a gentleness in the way the king listened, and a firmness in how he protected what mattered. Even the older women in the villages would smile when his name was spoken, remembering how he'd stooped to greet children at festivals. But today, his name rests heavier in the heart of the kingdom, the kind of heaviness that seems to press against the chest, waiting to reveal something darker ahead. And then he shifts, his voice lowering as if afraid the walls themselves might be listening. He recalls the moment the king's private chamber doors finally opened, and the cold air inside was almost a warning in itself. The guards stood frozen, not from discipline, but from instinct, sensing that something sacred had been disturbed. The room carried the unsettling stillness that always follows sudden loss, like the world holding its breath. And when they found King Alistair lying there, without a mark, without a cry for help, the silence felt almost cruel, as though the truth had slipped away before anyone could grasp it. Soon the palace became a maze of trembling whispers, the kind that slide between tapestries and echo down empty halls. The royal council moved with rehearsed calm, hiding something beneath their careful tones and veiled glances. Servants exchanged uneasy looks, unsure whether grief or fear should guide them. Rumors curled like smoke into the night air, each one twisting the story further from the light. And while the council insisted on secrecy, the kingdom felt every inch of that growing uncertainty. It was in that hush, that fragile moment, that suspicion quietly began to wake. He guides the listener deeper into that unsettling morning, describing how Queen Marianne stood at the far end of the corridor, her hands trembling ever so slightly despite years of mastering her composure. She wasn't a woman easily shaken, yet grief carved new shadows beneath her eyes. She kept replaying their last conversation, searching for hidden meanings she might have missed. The court ladies hovered nearby, offering comfort she barely felt. And as she stared at the chamber door, the weight of unspoken fears settled over her like a cold shawl. Something about this loss felt wrong, and her heart knew it before her mind dared to admit it. Meanwhile, outside the palace walls, life paused in the kingdom as if time itself were hesitant to move forward without its king. Merchants whispered cautiously across market stalls, their usual cheer muted. Mothers held their children closer, sensing the shift in the air even if they didn't know the details. Some recalled old stories about omens and dark tides, the kind people only mentioned when uncertainty clawed at the edges of their calm. And though the sun rose as it always did, it seemed dimmer, almost reluctant to shine. The kingdom felt abandoned, suspended between mourning and dread. Back inside, a group of trusted guards gathered in a quiet alcove, every whispered thought reinforcing the dread coiling in their stomachs. They'd sworn loyalty to King Alistair, and the idea that he might have suffered alone gnawed at them like a wound that refused to heal. Each man replayed the night's events, searching for anything out of place. A door left slightly ajar, a torch flickering oddly, a shadow that lingered too long. Their unease wasn't just suspicion, it was guilt, heavy and sharp, and though none dared say it aloud, they all felt the same unsettling truth rising. Something inside the castle had gone terribly, deliberately wrong. He brings the scene closer now, almost as if guiding a confidant through the dim corridors where truth hid behind every corner. In the council chamber, the advisors sat stiffly around a long oak table, each pretending calm, while fear pulsed beneath their ribs. They exchanged polite phrases, yet their eyes betrayed the storm inside them. Some wondered whether this was a natural death, while others silently tallied who stood to gain the most. Every heartbeat felt louder than their words, and though no one dared to say it, each one sensed a shadow creeping into the kingdom's future. As the day unfolded, tiny details began to gnaw at those who'd known the king best. A missing ring he never removed, a window latch mysteriously unlocked, a faint scent of unfamiliar herbs lingering in the room. These signs didn't shout, they whispered, tugging at the edges of certainty like a thread threatening to unravel a tapestry. The council insisted on keeping everything hidden, but the servants and guards exchanged knowing glances. Secrets, after all, have a way of slipping into the cracks of silence. And in Alarion, silence now felt like a living thing. By nightfall, the castle stood wrapped in a hush so heavy it seemed to press against the walls. Torchlight flickered uneasily, casting long, trembling shadows that felt almost sentient. Women in the lower quarters lit candles and murmured quiet prayers, unsure whom they feared more, an unseen enemy or the truth itself. Even the wind outside grew still, as if listening for something. And in that eerie stillness, one question lingered in every mind, quietly gathering strength, preparing to shape what would come next. He shifts the narration into the dim heart of the palace, where ambition curls like smoke beneath every whispered conversation. The nobles of Valerian begin to move with careful precision, each one wearing a mask of mourning, polished just enough to look sincere. Among them stands Duke Thalin, a man whose smile never quite reaches his eyes. He has a long history of bending politics the way others bend metal, shaping it quietly to his will. Women across the kingdom remember his charm, but they also remember the trail of rivals who mysteriously fell from favor. And now, with the king gone, his ambition glimmers sharper than a blade tucked beneath velvet. Nearby, Countess Evelyn glides through the palace halls like a subtle storm, beautiful, brilliant, and undeniably dangerous. Her mind works faster than most can speak, and she has never hesitated to make the difficult choices others feared. Behind that elegant posture lies a childhood carved by scarcity and survival, a past that taught her power is the only true shield. She watches the unfolding chaos with a steady gaze, already calculating her next move. Every whisper she hears becomes another piece on her hidden board. And though she smiles politely, tension coils beneath her calm like thunder waiting for its moment to strike. At the edge of this growing power struggle stands General Rowan, a man forged by decades of loyalty and war. He carries his honor like armor, though even that begins to feel heavier now. He loved King Alistair as a brother in arms, and grief carves lines into his weathered face. Yet in the shadows just behind that grief, a quieter temptation rises. For the first time, he realizes the throne is vulnerable, and perhaps the kingdom needs someone strong, someone righteous, someone like him. He hates himself for the thought, but it lingers, tugging at him with the persistence of an old wound reopening. He guides the listener deeper into the palace's tension, where every corridor feels like a chessboard and every noble, a piece preparing to strike. Duke Thalin begins moving subtly among the courtiers, offering condolences with a practiced softness that hides his sharper intentions. He leans close as he speaks, letting his words drip with concern while planting quiet seeds of doubt about the others. His allies feel a familiar thrill, remembering how he once helped them rise. His enemies, however, sense the trap tightening, and beneath his measured tone lies a silent promise. He will not let this opportunity slip. Countess Evelyn, on the other hand, prefers quieter rooms and smaller circles. She hosts private teas where the aroma of spiced herbs fills the air, and her voice flows like warm honey, soothing yet intoxicating. Women of the court gather around her, drawn by her magnetic poise. Unaware, she observes them with surgical precision. She notices trembling hands, darting eyes, half-finished sentences. Each detail gives her another thread to pull, and while others cling to grief, she quietly builds her influence, weaving loyalty with the same delicacy she once used to stitch dresses in her childhood home. General Rowan watches all of this from a distance, as though standing on the edge of a battlefield he never prepared for. He feels torn between honor and responsibility, unsure which one demands more of him. His soldiers look to him for direction, sensing the uncertainty that has seeped into the kingdom's bones. He speaks with measured calm, but inside, conflict grinds like stone against stone. Part of him wants to protect the throne at all costs. Another part wonders if safeguarding the kingdom means taking control himself, and these thoughts follow him like shadows he can't outrun. He draws the listener even closer now, letting them feel the tension tightening through the palace like a drawn bowstring. Duke Thalin begins hosting discreet gatherings in candlelit chambers, where wine flows just enough to loosen tongues but not enough to cloud memories. He listens more than he speaks, studying every hesitation, every slip of uncertainty. His ambition feels almost like a living creature beside him, whispering which alliances to nurture and which to sever. And though his words remain soft, the power he seeks glints fiercely beneath them, hungry and patient. Countess Evelyn, ever the strategist, chooses a different battlefield. She walks through the palace gardens at dusk, where the scent of lavender and damp earth soothes anxious minds. Here, she approaches nobles who prefer subtlety, offering them gentle guidance wrapped in empathy. Her smile feels warm, Yet her mind calculates every expression, every shift in their breathing. She knows fear makes people malleable, and she uses that truth with grace, born of survival. Under the fading sunlight, she gathers loyal hearts the way others gather flowers, each one another step toward the influence she has always believed she deserves. General Rowan feels the entire palace shifting like an unpredictable tide. Soldiers report strange movements in the city, and rumors of secret meetings reach his ears before breakfast. He walks through the barracks, the familiar clank of armor grounding him as memories of battles past stir within him. Once, he fought for a king he trusted. Now, he fights the urge to intervene before ambition consumes the court. His heart aches with loyalty, but temptation keeps brushing against his thoughts, subtle but persistent. And as night settles, he realizes the silent war has begun, pulling him deeper than he ever intended to go. He guides the listener into the dim corridors leading to King Alistair's private quarters, a place that once felt sacred, but now carries an unsettling chill. A small, cautious group of nobles and investigators slip inside, their footsteps soft against the polished floor as if they fear waking the ghosts of unanswered questions. Each one carries their own blend of dread and determination, knowing that whatever they uncover might shift the kingdom's fate. The room still holds the faint scent of the king's cedar oil, a reminder of the man they lost, and as they move deeper inside, the air feels weighted with secrets waiting to be disturbed. They begin searching with careful hands, brushing over tapestries, opening drawers, lifting the corners of rugs. The silence between them grows heavy as unusual details slowly come into focus. A chair ever so slightly out of place, a quill broken clean in half, a candle burned down far shorter than the others. These small inconsistencies tighten the knot in their chests, stirring emotions they're not ready to name. Some feel fear creeping up their spine, others anger simmering in their gut. Every new discovery adds another question to the ones none of them dare to voice aloud. One of the nobles, a woman who once served the king in matters of counsel, pauses near the side wall. Something about the paneling draws her closer, a soft intuition sharpened by years of reading people and rooms too well. Her fingertips trace the surface until she feels a subtle ridge, almost imperceptible. She presses, and a hidden compartment clicks open with a hush that steals everyone's breath. Inside rests a worn, leather-bound journal, the king's personal diary. They exchange tense glances, hearts pounding with a mix of anticipation and dread. And as the woman slowly opens it, the truth inside begins to whisper its first warning. He brings the listener closer, letting them feel the tremor that runs through the group as the diary cracks open, its pages yellowed and fragile at the edges. The investigators lean in, their breath catching as the first entries reveal a script they know well, steady, elegant, unmistakably Alistair's, but something feels off. The handwriting grows increasingly uneven as the days progress, as if fear had settled into the king's very bones. One noble gently runs a finger beneath a line describing sleepless nights, her chest tightening with the ache of realizing he suffered in silence. The room seems to shrink around them, each word another step into a truth they're not sure they want to face. As they read deeper, clues scattered throughout the chamber take on new meaning. A faint stain on the desk that once seemed like spilled ink now feels ominously deliberate. An empty vial they had dismissed suddenly casts a darker shadow. One investigator recalls how the king canceled several meetings before his death, an unusual habit for a ruler known for steady presence. Fear flickers across their faces as puzzle pieces begin aligning in ways none of them dared imagine. The weight of responsibility presses down on their shoulders, making every breath feel heavier, thicker, as if the air itself is burdened by what they're discovering. The woman holding the diary pauses again, swallowing hard as she reaches a set of entries written in hurried strokes. They speak of betrayal, not in loud accusations, but in hints, symbols, and cryptic notes about gatherings held behind closed doors. There's mention of a shadowed figure visiting the palace, someone the king trusted once, someone he feared he no longer should. A wave of dread washes through the group, prickling their skin, tightening their throats. They exchange uneasy glances, knowing that these pages could shatter everything they thought they understood. And still, one truth calls to them silently, urging them deeper into the king's final confessions. He draws the listener into the tight circle around the diary, where tension pulses like a second heartbeat. The investigators lean over the pages as the next entries reveal markings they can't immediately decipher, strange symbols, hurried sketches, and names partially scratched out as if the king feared writing them fully. The atmosphere thickens, the way it does before a storm breaks. One noble feels her throat tighten, remembering how Alistair once laughed about secrets being the true currency of the crown. Now, reading his guarded warnings, she realizes he carried far more weight than anyone ever saw. The sorrow of that truth settles heavy in her chest. They continue searching the chamber with renewed intensity, guided by the hints left in the diary. One man kneels beside the king's writing desk, pressing his palm to the wood as if hoping it might speak. He notices tiny scrape marks along the floor, subtle but unmistakable, a sign the desk had been moved recently. Another noble sifts through the king's quills and parchment, her fingers trembling as she finds a note tucked beneath a blank page, written in a rushed hand, "Not safe, not tonight." The room seems to exhale something cold, brushing against their skin, reminding them they are not just uncovering secrets, they are stepping into danger the king himself tried to outrun. As they gather around the diary again, the woman holding it looks up, her eyes shadowed by fear and something deeper, determination. She turns to the final page they reached, where the writing stops abruptly, the ink trailing off as though the king had been interrupted mid-thought. The unfinished sentence hangs in the air between them, heavy and threatening, urging them to keep reading forward. Their breaths align, slow and anxious, as though each of them senses the same truth. Whatever comes next could unravel every facade in the palace, and with trembling resolve, they prepare to turn the page that may finally expose the first thread of what truly happened. He eases the listener into the king's final days, where every page of the diary breathes fear and urgency. King Alistair's hand, once steady and commanding, now trembles across the paper, revealing sleepless nights filled with shadows lurking in familiar corridors. He writes of secret meetings held in candlelit rooms, of voices he once trusted whispering threats under the guise of loyalty. The weight of betrayal presses on him like stone, each entry a careful record of threats and coded warnings. One can almost feel the tension radiating off the pages, thick and suffocating, pulling the reader into the mind of a ruler who can no longer rest in safety. The diary hints at names never spoken aloud, secrets only Alistair dared to know. He writes of glances that carried threats, of smiles that hid knives sharper than any blade. His fear is palpable, like a shadow crawling along the walls of his chamber at night, cold and relentless. The words reveal a man struggling between his duty to the kingdom and his instinct for survival, a man aware that trust is a fragile, fleeting illusion. Those reading the diary now feel the pulse of his anxiety, the subtle rise and fall of panic under a calm exterior, like a heartbeat they can almost hear in the silence. As the nobles lean closer, the entries grow darker and more urgent. Alistair describes cryptic meetings where agendas were hidden behind polite gestures and ceremonial bows. He leaves notes on suspicious correspondences, coded messages only he could understand, hints that point toward a threat no one dares name. Tension coils in the air around those reading, making the flickering candlelight seem more menacing. Every revelation sparks suspicion, and soon the investigators can feel the first tendrils of paranoia creeping into the group itself. And in that quiet, the diary seems to pulse with a single question: who among them is not what they appear to be? He guides the listener deeper into Alistair's mind, where fear and resolve are locked in a relentless dance. The diary reveals nights spent pacing the cold stone floors, replaying conversations that now sting with betrayal. Alistair writes of alliances crumbling in silence, of whispers slipping past guards like shadows, unnoticed yet deadly. Each word captures a ruler's desperation to stay one step ahead, a man aware that even a single mistake could cost him his life. The investigators can almost hear his footsteps echoing through the empty corridors, feel the tension vibrating off the parchment in quiet, desperate pulses. The king's entries hint at a traitor among those closest to him, someone whose loyalty is worn as a mask. He leaves clues carefully, hoping the right person would read between the lines and act before it's too late. The descriptions of secret meetings and covert messages sketch a world where trust is currency and deception is everywhere. Every diary note vibrates with a subtle warning, a tug at the conscience of those who might seek the truth. And as the nobles absorb each line, they begin to see the shadows of one another, glancing sideways, weighing intentions, questioning who could harbor the heart of a killer. Yet, amid the fear, Alistair's wisdom and foresight shine through. He records strategies not just to protect himself, but to safeguard the kingdom, leaving behind breadcrumbs meant to guide those who survive the storm. The diary becomes a delicate map of intentions and dangers, a quiet testament to his devotion. His words are precise, laced with urgency but also with hope, as though he believed even in treachery, some light could remain. The nobles feel that hope flicker within them, fragile but undeniable. And as the pages continue, it becomes clear that the diary may hold the key to unmasking the assassin, though doing so may demand more courage than they ever imagined. He draws the listener into the tense final pages, where Alistair's words grow hurried, almost frantic, as if the king's very hand feared the end was near. Each line trembles with the weight of unspoken threats and veiled accusations, leaving the reader straining to catch every nuance. The diary speaks of meetings that ended too quietly, of glances that lingered longer than courtesy should allow, of promises broken in silence. The investigators feel the pulse of paranoia thicken around them, the same invisible weight the king must have felt in his final days. Every entry tightens the knot in their stomachs, making each page a step further into danger. Hints of possible suspects flicker like candlelight across the diary's margins. Alistair never names anyone outright, but the clues are sharp and deliberate, pointing toward betrayals wrapped in trust. The nobles exchange uneasy glances, each silently weighing the potential of their companions' loyalties. They can feel suspicion pricking at the edges of their minds, and the atmosphere grows taut, as if the very walls of the palace are holding their breath. With every revelation, alliances begin to fracture in whispers, and the seeds of paranoia blossom like shadows under the moonlight. And yet, the diary also carries a quiet plea, a final effort to guide the kingdom even beyond his death. Alistair writes with precision, leaving coded directions that promise the possibility of justice or vengeance, depending on how carefully they are interpreted. The nobles sense the tension between hope and despair lingering on the pages, understanding that the king's last warnings are more than history. They are a map through peril. As they close the diary for a moment, each one feels the weight of the kingdom pressing down, a silent call to act, and the knowledge that the next choices they make could determine not just the assassin, but the fate of Alarion itself. He begins by pulling the listener into the palace as accusations ripple through its grand halls, thick and electric like a storm gathering over Alarion. Nobles whisper behind silken curtains, each word carefully crafted to cast doubt while preserving appearances. Duke Thalen glides through the crowd, his smile a mask, eyes flicking for reactions, measuring fear and loyalty in equal parts. Countess Evelyn stands at the side, serene yet calculating, letting others reveal themselves through their own words before she acts. Even General Rowan moves cautiously, torn between exposing secrets and protecting the fragile peace. Every glance exchanged carries the weight of suspicion, and the castle seems to hum with an invisible, relentless tension. The diary's final clues spread quietly among the trusted few, like sparks threatening to ignite a powder keg. Each noble interprets the hints through the lens of their own ambition, paranoia shaping every thought. Accusations are tossed lightly at first, like feathers on the wind, until they thicken into a suffocating storm. Whispers become confrontations, and subtle manipulations sharpen into pointed strategies. Everyone is trying to control the narrative, to define what is truth and what is deception. The palace becomes a living entity of intrigue, its corridors echoing with secrets and half-truths that threaten to tear apart the very foundation of power. Meanwhile, the people of Alarion sense the unrest even from afar. Servants glance anxiously at locked doors. Soldiers patrol with more caution than usual, and the city outside murmurs with unease. The kingdom itself feels the ripple effect of the nobles' silent war, a tension that extends beyond the gilded halls. And in the midst of this charged atmosphere, a final clue from the diary awaits discovery, hidden like a heartbeat beneath layers of ink and secrecy. It promises either revelation or chaos, and those who find it must decide whether to use it to restore order or seize power for themselves. He pulls the listener closer to the unfolding drama, where every step in the palace feels like walking on thin ice. The diary's final clue surfaces in the hands of one cautious noble, its meaning twisting through their mind like smoke in a drafty room. Eyes dart, whispers quicken, and alliances begin to fray under the weight of suspicion. Each noble now weighs the consequences of speaking or remaining silent, knowing a single misstep could destroy not only themselves but the kingdom. The tension is almost tangible, hanging thick as fog in the Great Hall, pressing down on hearts and minds alike. Duke Thalen senses the opportunity, his ambition flaring like a torch in the night. He maneuvers with precision, planting doubt and subtly shifting the focus toward those he perceives as threats. Countess Evelyn counters quietly, her brilliance masking the sharp edge of her strategy. She lets others speak first, measuring each reaction before deploying her influence like a surgeon wielding a scalpel. Even General Rowan feels the pull of temptation stronger than ever, the diary's hints whispering to him the power he could wield if only he dared act. And in that room, every heartbeat seems to echo the silent, invisible war consuming the palace. Meanwhile, the sense of dread outside the council chambers grows, infecting servants and soldiers alike with a heightened vigilance. Courtiers tread lightly, fearing missteps or overheard words that could shift loyalty in a single breath. The kingdom feels suspended, teetering between revelation and ruin, as though every brick of the castle holds its own breath. And at the center of it all, the final clue from the diary hovers like a specter, waiting for the one bold or desperate enough to act. Its discovery promises a turning point, a moment that could either unravel the conspiracy or illuminate the truth hidden in silence for too long. He draws the listener into the climactic tension, where every whisper carries the weight of revelation. The final clue from the diary is laid bare, and suddenly, the threads of suspicion snap into place, exposing a truth no one expected. Eyes widen, breaths catch, and the room feels suspended in the fragile instant between shock and reaction. Faces that were once composed now reveal the flickers of fear, guilt, or surprise, each reaction a reflection of the delicate balance of power that has dominated Alarion for weeks. And in that moment, the palace itself seems to hold its breath, as if awaiting the next move that will decide its fate. The real assassin is revealed, not in a dramatic confrontation, but through careful observation and the careful unraveling of Alistair's cryptic notes. The truth is sharp and unsettling, touching the core of personal loyalty and ambition, shaking the nobles to their foundations. Some feel betrayal so deep it aches, while others taste the bittersweet flavor of justice finally served. The diary's guidance proves precise, yet it also forces each noble to confront their own choices, their own desires, and their own role in a kingdom teetering between chaos and order. Even in victory, the cost of knowledge weighs heavily on every heart, and as the dust settles, the throne of Alarion stands uncertain, a symbol of both what was lost and what might yet be rebuilt. The kingdom feels fragile, its people looking to the nobles who survived the storm, hoping for guidance, stability, and wisdom. Silence finally breaks, not the quiet of ignorance, but the charged silence of clarity, where the truth has been spoken, and yet the future remains unwritten. And within that silence lies a subtle promise. The story of the kingdom continues, shaped by those brave enough to act, and haunted by the lessons left behind by King Alistair's final words.